It's the SNL Hall of Fame podcast with Chief Conversationalist Thomas Sena. Featuring Matt Ardill. And now, curator of the hall, JD.
All right, hello and welcome to another edition of the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. I am your chief conversationalist and host today for today's episode, Thomas Sena. This is our customary end of season extravaganza. It's the SNL Hall of Fame Roundtable, the show in which we invite SNL Hall of Fame voters to share their ballots and their thought processes behind their choices. This is always an interesting exercise to get into kind of the psyche of some of our voters, how they're thinking, everything of that nature. Maybe there's a little spirited debates, maybe not. I don't know. This could be a nice roundtable tonight. In the past, we've had a little bit of spirit happen. Previous roundtables have changed minds, I think, too. There's been some bargaining. There's been some kind of wheeling and dealing and trading votes. So it's been kind of interesting. I think we have a good roundtable tonight. I'm really excited to introduce the panelists. First of all, from the Saturday Night Network, my guest this season for Danny DeVito. He's been my guest previous. I think he's appeared in maybe all seasons of the SNL Hall of Fame, all 6 seasons, Bill? Except one. And Bill holds a grudge for that one season, so we made sure to get him on for every season since then. I know. Bill Kenney, how are you today?
Thomas, I'm great. These roundtables are always so much fun. I was on with you and Kirsten not too long ago, and for the last season. So this is a lot of fun. I've gained a new respect for like the baseball writers who release their ballots for the Hall of Fame, because you're really putting yourself out here for people to see and judge you. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You get to get nitpicked. That's
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for joining me, Bill, and also joining us as a panelist. First time that I've podcasted with this person, but you recognize the voice here on the SNL Hall of Fame. Co-host of the SNL Hall of Fame Water Cooler, Shari Fesko. Shari, thank you so much for joining me. Good to see you.
Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. 2 of my favorites. I've already gushed to Bill, but 2 of my favorites. And I can't believe I get to be with, I think, SNL, like, masters. You guys know everything and can recall things. And I have a very shoddy memory. So I'm very impressed with the way that you can like recall sketches, recall who was in what sketch. Like, it's very impressive to me. My memory's not quite that good, but hopefully I'll keep pace here. I'm really excited to be here. This is gonna be a lot of fun.
Oh, it's going to be great. Well, on the Hall of Fame Water Cooler, I hear you pull out nuggets here every now and then. Like, not every now and then, like every episode, I think you have pretty good recall. I hear you spout facts, and you remember sketches from the 80s and 70s. So I don't know. I think you do a pretty good job.
Thank you. I try.
Yeah, well, I'm so happy to have you aboard. As the third panelist and host, I'll actually be sharing my votes this time around too. Sometimes we have 3 panelists and I just kind of drive the ship. Sometimes we have 2. I think tonight I'm going to take advantage of this and weasel my way in and share my votes as well and kind of mix it up a little bit with the panelist. Before we get started sharing our votes, I always want to know how many votes each of you are using and maybe kind of a rationale behind that. As Bill alluded to, we do kind of liken it to like a baseball Hall of Fame, like a sports Hall of Fame kind of voting. And I know when the Baseball Hall of Fame writers vote for the Hall of Fame, they only have a finite amount of votes, so they have to kind of strategically use those. We have up to 15 votes for the SNL Hall of Fame. You can use 1 vote if you'd like. I don't know why you'd want to do that and be kind of a Grinch this holiday season. Use 1 vote. I don't know. But it's up to you. You could use between 1 and 15. Bill, how many votes are you using?
As I've said before, Thomas, I am a big hall guy. I'm doing all 15. With the swath of the show, it's not like you're putting in the Hall of Very Good. It's still the Hall of Fame because it's so deep of a bench with writers, hosts, cast members, musical guests. So yeah, I'm going the full 15.
And Bill is not a Grinch this holiday season. Shari, how many votes will you be using this time around?
Oh my gosh, for sure. I 100% agree with Bill. I used every one of my votes, and I wish I had more room because they're just, as Bill said, there's just so much talent. And, everybody brings their own gifts. So it was very, very hard.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Looking at the ballot this year, and I'll go through the ballot as well, but just so many talented people. A few surprises that I would think would already be in the SNL Hall of Fame that aren't in the SNL Hall of Fame. I'm sure we'll get to those people. Just a really stacked ballot. As far as me, I have 12 locks. There's 3 that I'm like kind of sure that I want to put in, but I'm leaving room for Bill and Shari to maybe kind of lead me towards something or make me think in a different way. So 12, I would say, are locks. And then I kind of have 3 open just to see what happens during this discussion. So I have 3 kind of placeholders in those spots. So I think I will use all 15, 12 for sure. But again, I'm leaving room to be swayed by these 2 great individuals that I have on the panel today. So let me go ahead and go through the nominees for the SNL Hall of Fame here in season 6. Starting with the cast members, we have 18 total cast members on the ballot this year. Returning to the ballot, Fred Armisen, Vanessa Bayer, Rachel Dratch, Will Forte, Anna Gasteyer, Taran Killam, Kate McKinnon, Tracy Morgan, Lorraine Newman, Chris Parnell, and Adam Sandler. First time on the ballot, we have Beck Bennett, Aidy Bryant, John Lovitz, Garrett Morris, Bobby Moynihan, Sherry O'Terry, and Joe Piscopo. For hosts, we have 11 hosts on the ballot. Returning are Jim Carrey, John Hamm, Buck Henry, Scarlett Johansson, and Martin Short. First time on the ballot, Charles Barkley, Danny DeVito, Adam Driver, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Final time on the ballot. This is important. This is where some of that strategy comes in with your vote. So final time on the ballot for Candice Bergen and Paul Rudd. For the writers, we have 9 writers on the ballot this season. Returning to the ballot, Adam McKay, John Mulaney, Herb Sargent, Rosie Schuster, and Julio Torres. First time on the ballot for Bob Odenkirk and Alan Zweibel. And final time on the ballot for Jack Handy and Paula Pell. And musical guests, returning to the ballot, David Bowie. Pretty light on musical guests. We only have 4. So David Bowie returning to the ballot. First time for U2 and Jack White. And final time for Dave Grohl. So that's 42 nominees total. A lot of returning. We have 4 nominees total. It's their final time on the ballot. So some strategery will be happening here in the SNL Hall of Fame. So now it's time for us to reveal our ballots. This is the meat and potatoes of the podcast. So Bill, why don't you kick things off? Who's the first person who you're voting for, who you would like to talk about?
Well, I think I have to go with one of my all-time favorites and one of the people who helped me get into SNL. I knew his catchphrases before I was even watching because I started in season 12. He was on 11. He basically saved the show. We like to say that phrase with some people. He is one of the main reasons SNL is still on today. In that horrendous season 11 season, he was the shining light. Of course, I am talking about John Lovitz.
You shot me, John Lovitz, amongst many catchphrases. Oh, man, I love John Lovitz. You're right, Bill. Brad Robinson was my guest for John Lovitz this season, and we definitely touched on how Lovitz was instrumental. Doesn't get talked about a lot as far as people who really, not like saved the show, but just kept it on solid footing even when it was maybe a little bit of a rough patch, because his first season was a little rough, but it wasn't him. He said he, Dennis Miller, and Nora Dunn were the holdovers, but Lovitz was really kind of like the rock heading from that season to, Dana's first season, Phil and Jan's first season. Lovitz was just kind of that mainstay. Just an amazing cast member. Shari, does Lovitz make your ballot?
He does not. He was in that second tier for me because I loved Lovitz. He was definitely one of the ones that was in those formative years that we always talk about, those high school years. So definitely an excellent choice, Bill. And he would be in here. It was so hard. Too many good ones, too much talent.
And I kind of, in a way, I understand that. Lovitz is on my ballot for the record. He's one of my locks. And I think I love John Lovitz, but I think Brad's argument really swayed me when he was my guest on this season. And it really revealed just how vital Lovitz was to the show. But Bill, we also brought up that Lovitz sort of got lost when, so Dana became a big star. Phil was kind of that consummate glue guy. And then you had Mike Myers come in and really become a star. But Lovitz never really became a star past big SNL fans. When he was on SNL, he didn't quite break through to the mainstream like Dana and Mike. Do you think that might have some effect on maybe how voters kind of view Lovitz?
I think this is the first era where we see people stay past 5 years. Before this, you were lucky to make it to 5 with all the turnover and the Ebersol years and things like that. So he leaves after 5, and you and Brad touched on this, and that was a great conversation you guys had, where, he leaves because of he wants to go make a movie, and that's so silly to think about today with, people like Pete Davidson disappearing for 6 months and still being on the show. To think if he had been able to stay another 3 or 4 years, I think we wouldn't even be having this argument. He would have been a first ballot right in. But he does get kind of overtaken by the fact that he is in the second golden era. There's so much talent. And as you said, you've got Dana Carvey, who just takes the world by storm in season 12. And by the time we get to Phil really heating it up in 14, 15, 16, Lovitz is definitely on the back burner a lot. But with all of the things that he brought to the show, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that he should be included in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Shari, do you think maybe for a casual viewer, when they think of that era, Lovitz is pretty maybe far down on the list of who they think of, not to his own fault, but is there something to that?
Oh, absolutely. He definitely gets lost in the Dana. Dana was, as Bill just said, I was just listening to them talk about this on the Saturday Night Network on my way home, listening to the roundtable that they do with the Patreons and stuff. And they were talking about how Dana was just this magnetic force, like a tornado of sorts. And it's hard to hold your own against that, but I certainly think John did his best. And a credit that they're still friends and that there was no bad blood or hard feelings.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. So anybody who's on the fence, I urge you, go watch Tommy Flanagan. Go watch that People's Court sketch when he played Mephistopheles. That's one of my favorite sketches from that era, and John's just awesome in that. So I submit that one. That's not the sketch that we use because it's a little long. It's 7 or 8 minutes, but it's a wonderful sketch. So I submit those for Lovitz, who Bill and I have as receiving one of our votes. Shari does not have Lovitz. Who do you have, Shari? Who do you want to talk about first?
You know what? I am going to talk about someone I think is very underappreciated, and again got lost in a lot of big players. Just an amazing singer, still very much around, still doing things. And I'm talking about Anna Gasteyer, whose percentage was very low. So I hope she does better this round because I just think she's magnetic and can hold her own with anybody and has done so.
So Anna Gasteyer gets Shari's vote. In that mix with Another person on the ballot, I think when we think of Anna, we also kind of think of like Shari O'Terry, Molly Shannon, a really golden age of women on SNL. Finally, an era where like women were highlighted. And I think the show is better for it. And Anna was a huge part of that. Of course, Delicious Dish. She did The Culps with Will Ferrell that a lot of people love. Bill, is Anna Gasteyer receiving your vote?
She is not. And much like Shari saying about John Lovitz, I think Anna was right there for me too, but it was just one of those difficult cuts. But she is super important to the show. I mean, we've talked about season 21 and all of those people coming in after the disaster of season 20. And Anna comes in the next season. And as talented as Nancy Walls was, she never really fit with the mold of Shari and Molly. And when Anna comes in and makes this triumvirate of women, like, you can't beat it for the next 5 years. Like, they're just incredible. As you said, Thomas, like, this is finally a moment for women to really shine on the show overall, over men a lot of the time in this era. So love her characters. Was rooting for her to come back and host while she had her show on NBC. Unfortunately, that did not happen. But she's somebody I like a lot, but she just missed the cut.
Yeah, same for me. If I had 16 or 17 votes, Anna might have gotten one of those votes, honestly. It was a numbers game with Anna. She's a Hall of Fame talent, but it's just a numbers game, really. Arguably the greatest singer, she and Garrett Morris might be the two greatest singers that I've seen in SNL history, amongst others, Cecily Strong, Chloe Trost, all these great singers. But Anna's like definitely tops among them. Just hilarious comedic timing. I love Anna Gasteyer. Just wish I had more votes. So it's no offense to Anna. Of course, we all love Anna Gasteyer. It's really just a numbers game. So Bill, I want to go back to you. Who do you want to talk about? You're the second person on your list.
Well, I think I'm going to have to go with somebody who has only, like a fine wine, has gotten better over time, to go back and watch. I mean, they were great when they were on the show, but again, like, this is a recurring theme with deep casts and being 3 or 4 or 5 down on the list. And might have been underappreciated at the time. I'm talking about Will Forte. Just a fantastic talent. One of the most unique voices that SNL has ever had in its cast. So many great characters that he brought, not to mention one-offs like Fartface and Potato Chip, Jeff Montgomery. So there's so much here. And, you know, when we see people like Sarah Sherman come onto the show, this is what we're hoping for. That they're going to be a unique voice on the show, that they don't get muted by the SNL machine. And I don't think Forte was most of the time. I think he got a lot of his really wacky stuff on. And if you go back and watch those sketches now, 15 years out from him being on the show, they've only gotten better. You know, if you need a laugh, throw on Potato Chip, throw on ESPN Classic, and you're going to laugh. Like, you just need that 5-minute burst of energy. Forte is the way to go. So I'm putting him on the list.
Man, when we're talking about personal favorite SNL cast members, not a ranking, because I have like Will Ferrell's my number one, Eddie Murphy's up there, of course. Just personal favorites. For me, Vanessa Bayer and Will Forte. Those are probably like my two of Thomas's like personal favorite cast members, because I loved Will Forte's oddball sense of humor. I loved that he had his own lane on SNL to kind of do what he wanted. That the last 10 minutes, the 10 to 1 slot was Will Forte's slot. And a lot of people don't remember this, but the show was kind of bad after Will Ferrell left. There was some rough seasons, but honestly, the kind of shining star of some of the rough patch was Will Forte sketches, like when he brought in the Falconer or something like that. Like, those oddball Will Forte sketches were often the best things about an otherwise kind of bad 2 or 3 seasons there when they were trying to find their footing. So I think Will Forte gets a lot of points for me for that. Shari, does Will Forte's oddball sense of humor appeal to you and enough to maybe vote him in?
He's another one that just was on that second tier for me. It's funny because I don't know, as I've gotten older, I've definitely changed. I don't know about you too, but my tastes, my SNL favorites have changed a lot over the years. And I did not get Will at all when I was young. But now I've watched Potato Chip like 1,000 times. And The Falconer. I mean, I don't think I got any of that when I was younger, but now my sense of humor has matured, I guess, or immatured. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah,
And
if you want to look at that.
and I really he's so talented, and he's got a new show now that I've only seen one episode of, but it's like a mystery show, and he's got to be a lot more subdued. And I'm impressed with how he can change the channel. He doesn't always have to be the weird, wacky one. He can really do it all, and he did it all on SNL as well. So, again, great vote, Bill. I just not enough room.
Yeah, I love this though. I like not having consensus with our picks. It makes it more interesting, and now it makes me intrigued. Like, well, if she doesn't have Lovitz or Will Forte, like, who does Shari have? And you can make compelling cases for that. So on our ballots, Will Forte is on 2 out of 3. Don't know that he'll make it this time around. We'll see. I mean, he wasn't for everybody, but definitely for the people who he was for. Like, people like me who really love him, or John Schneider from the SNN absolutely loves Will Forte. So I love just not having consensus. I love just not having this groupthink. It's awesome. So Shari, who do you want to go to next for your second person on your ballot?
I want to talk about something that this show, that the Hall of Fame has done, that the Saturday Night Network has done. They've made me think about people that I didn't even think about. Like, that I knew existed because I'm a nerd for the show, so I knew the basics. But I had never heard of this gentleman much, just in passing. And I've read things about him, and I've heard him mentioned I listen to like every SNL podcast I can get my ears on. And he's mentioned a lot. And he was kind of quiet, but he was a really big deal. And I also have a lot of writers on my ballot because I think writers really get short shrift. And in the end, writing is what I think the most important thing with SNL. Acting is second to me. Writing is number one. So I am going to nominate, or my vote rather, is going to be Herb Sargent, who I really didn't know much of anything about. And I went and found on the internet some type of tribute that was done. And it had it was a who's who of comedy talking about him. And I read their essays. And of course, I couldn't read them all because there were so many. But I went down to Lorne Michaels, the man himself, who says Herb Sargent could have gone to the bigger show, which was that Howard Cosell show. But he didn't. He wanted to do SNL. And I think he was one of the driving forces behind Update. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Herb and Chevy worked on Update very closely together and formulated, like, the Update that we see now is kind of one of Herb Sargent's creations in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't know from nothing, but thanks to all of you at the SNN and all of you here at the Hall of Fame, I was educated to what an amazing force he was. He really helped drive the show. And Lorne talked all in his paragraph, all about how Herb was like his mentor and gave him so many good ideas and so many tips when he was just this young punk who didn't really know what he was doing. So, yeah.
Yeah. Herb Sargent should be noted that he took a very, very large pay cut to do SNL. He got paid way below scale to do SNL because he had all kinds of experience. He was the adult in the room at SNL. They needed his voice. Bill, you are a connoisseur of SNL history. You were quite the SNL historian. Herb Sargent, SNL Hall of Fame. What say you?
Yeah, I think he came up the last time on the roundtable, and I made the argument for him. He's on my ballot for sure. It's so important, and I remember reading as a kid the the Hill and Weingrad book, the Saturday Night book, which I still have and is dog-eared, and and hearing his name, I mean, that was how I learned of him. And then also finding out as time went on how much he had to do with to the Night Show with Johnny Carson, which is another one of my favorites. Even though I was way too young for that show, I still watch the reruns of that. He had such a hand in that, and to think about the one thing that has lasted since the very beginning, Weekend Update, in various forms, but it's been there since day one, and he is the main reason for that. Anchors have come and gone, but he was a writer for that for so long. He also gave the moniker of not ready for primetime players because of the Howard Cosell show and them being in prime time and calling themselves Saturday Night Live at the same exact time. So he's very, very important to the history of the show, almost as important as Lorne Michaels. So definitely on my ballot.
Yeah, man, he's not part of one of my 12 locks, but I did put Herb Sargent ? As one of the. I'm gonna consider him as part of that last batch. The whole Weekend Update thing and being one of the main architects of Weekend Update has to play a huge role in his argument, and just being like a steady hand. And Lorne, like these were punk kids, Lorne included, was pretty much a punk kid when SNL started, and you have Herb Sargent, the kind of wily veteran in there, and it's hard to probably overstate his presence. I love in the Saturday Night movie. I don't know if you've seen it yet, Shari, but this probably won't give anything away because I'm not gonna like directly quote me. But there's one scene where I love how they depict Herb, where Chevy Chase goes up to him like just kind of for advice or just to kind of like lend an ear, and Herb like basically lays out like a dark version of Chevy's career and how it's gonna play out, and it's really funny. It's so hilarious. I love that depiction of Herb Sargent. He's just like, as a matter of fact, he was like, yeah, you're gonna fall off a balcony and you're gonna do this and you're gonna be surrounded by yes men and you're gonna do like all of this stuff. And that I just love that they gave Herb like his little slice of that movie. That was pretty awesome. I think you guys may have. Oh, that's one that you could have swayed me on. So Herb Sargent gets Bill's vote and Shari's vote, and I'm a maybe on Herb Sargent. I'm gonna actually talk about somebody who was instrumental in the earlier seasons as well, and somebody who I'm not shocked that he's still on the ballot and not already in the Hall of Fame, but I'm just a little disappointed because I think this person's a lock in my eyes, and it's the host category. It's Buck Henry, and he's a lock for me. A 10-time host in the early seasons. We got Buck Henry twice a year when the show needed somebody who they trusted, who they knew we were going to get a good show out of this person. When they had somebody like Miskell Spillman host who won the contest, the Anybody Could Host contest, who did they have kind of leading that? It was Buck Henry kind of guiding the action because he was a steady hand and he was awesome in sketches. He could play just part of an ensemble. He could lead sketches. And we saw him lead sketches multiple times, just him in a sketch, and that's all. And he was entertaining. I think maybe he gets overlooked because he's not known for anything or for much outside of SNL. He wrote The Graduate, but honestly, who knows? Like with these classic movies, who really knows the writers? Really, like he wasn't Dustin Hoffman. He wasn't in The Graduate. So even though he wrote like a classic movie, people don't really know him for that. So I think there's maybe like some kind of bias there, is that he was part of the older era of SNL, and he wasn't known for much outside of SNL. But Buck Henry is a lock for me. I want to start with Shari. What do you think of Buck Henry's candidacy?
This is another one that I knew I'd seen episodes with him, but, reruns and such, but I really wasn't that familiar. And I don't think most casual fans are that familiar, which is why I think he kind of languishes on the ballot a bit. But he's on mine as well. Nice. So I think we'll see if this is our first consensus. I listened to the episode with him was it John Schneider who did?
Yeah,
Buck
John made
Henry?
the case. Yeah, John appears with our friends on the Not Ready for Primetime project. He appears. He's like the Buck Henry guy, though. Bill did sneak in and steal some of John's corner on that show for Buck Henry. But no, John's he's a huge Buck Henry fan. He was my guest for the Buck Henry show.
And that was a really good episode. And just heard him on the 50 best hosts, which you were great on, by the way, Bill. Awesome job. And you talked extensively about Buck on there, you and John did. And I did, again, you all schooled me and made me a believer. And I have since watched several sketches with him, including some of the Samurai, which he was in a lot of them. And he was just so sharp for not being an actor, really.
Mm-hmm.
To not be an actor, like, I don't think there's too many writers that aren't actors at all. Like, Mulaney's a writer, Conan's a writer, but they're also on screen. I don't think he was ever really on screen, but he was a natural. And that's really impressive to me. So, yep, definitely on my ballot.
Awesome. Bill, I assume we have a consensus here, but you're full of surprises sometimes.
Well, Thomas, I've got to say, of course he is. Of course he is. I'm going to go one step farther than what you said. I am shocked and disappointed. This is season 4 of him being on this ballot. We've pleaded with voters to put him in. It's really surprising, and I get it. And John and I have talked about this, and thank you, Shari. I appreciate you saying that. About the host countdown. It was a lot of fun, and getting to talk about him. All this digital media is out there to go and watch the sketches. You can go on YouTube and watch him. I know it's 45 years ago now since we've really seen him on the show, but it's all there for you to see. A lot of it holds up. Uncle Roy excluded, of course, but that's still funny. Sorry, it's still funny. You couldn't do that today. We've said that before, but he has so many great moments on the show. One of the best runners in the history of the show when he mistakenly gets hit with the samurai sword, has the bandage on, and they just continually, the bandages get bigger and bigger. Chevy makes a joke on Update. They would never do that today. Like, that's what we're looking for when we talk about things like runners on the show. But yeah, I mean, he's one of the best of all time, and he is hurt by the fact that even though he was alive until just a couple years ago, he never came back to the show outside of the 15th anniversary. So it's understandable to a certain extent, but now that you have all this at your fingertips to be able to go and watch him, there's no reason not to put him in.
Yeah, they wouldn't do Uncle Roy today, and they also wouldn't have somebody host 2 times in one season today. And he did that 5 different seasons. The first 5 seasons of the show, Buck was on there twice a season. I think that says a lot about him. So we have our first consensus, Buck Henry in the host category, 10-timer Buck Henry. So Shari, I want to kick it back to you. Who else do you want to share?
Okay, let me see. I have so many good ones. You know what, Thomas? I know you're going to have this one on your ballot too, but I'm just going to do it because she's one of my all-time favorite cast members. You'll notice I have a lot of women on here. I'm partial to them. I don't think there's enough ever, but it is, as Bill says, it's getting a lot better since Anna and Molly. It's definitely getting better, but I'd always love to see more. Anna, this lady she's just phenomenal. She's still around. She's still making shows. She still appears in shows. And I'm talking about one of Thomas and my favorites, Vanessa Bayer. I adore Vanessa. She is so funny. And she's just got these like subtle little things that she does with her voice and with her face. And she doesn't even need to say anything and I'm laughing. She works so well with other people, like the ex-porn stars. I mean, she's just a crack up. Jacob the Bar Mitzvah Boy, of course. I could go on and on. I adore her. I love the interview they did with her on Fly in the Wall. And she was a delight on that. I think they asked Thomas, and they were asking about people from SNL that you'd want to have dinner with. And I think she was one of yours.
She was.
Oh, heck
Yep.
yeah. I want to come to that dinner because I think she would be so much fun to listen to. I know she has a podcast. I need to get around to listening to it because I'm sure she's great.
It's called
So,
How Did We Get Weird with her brother Jonah Bear.
Yes.
She and her brother talk about, and Vanessa's like, part of the reason why I said I wanted her to be part of that dinner is because she and I are like 4 days apart or something. Like we're November 81. Like we're about the same. We could have so much to talk about. I could talk about Vanessa Bear for days. Like she and Will Forte are like my two favorite cast members. You could pull my string, Bill, and I'll talk for days. But I want to let you, Bill, talk about Vanessa Bear and see if you have her on your ballot.
Yeah, she's definitely on my ballot. She may have had, this is a recurring theme too, I suppose, with Lovitz and Forte, being further down on the depth chart of the show when she was on, and having people like Kristen and Cecily and Aidy kind of overshadow her, but she still, carved out her own little corner of the show and was so fantastic. I loved hearing you and Sammy talk about her, and she's always been one of my favorites as well. I think she just had such a unique voice for the show. Didn't do a lot of impressions, but her original characters kind of just shine through, including all the way to the very end with Don Lazarus. Like, I think she would probably be in my top 3 as far as people who have alumni who have not hosted the show, who could still host the show, obviously, who are still with us. She's definitely high up there for me and on my ballot.
And what I discovered, and I don't know, Shari, you said you've had this happen to you with some of the other people we've talked about. I think Vanessa falls into the category of, you don't quite view her as like a Hall of Fame level talent until you go back and watch her sketches and look at everything that she's done, look at her resume and look at her talent and performances. And then she screams, I'm a Hall of Famer. But on the surface, you think Vanessa Bear, and I think most people are like, well, I mean, she was good, but Hall of Fame. But I think Shari, she's one of those where you actually have to go back to her resume and then watch the sketches. And I think that it like screams out Hall of Fame.
Oh, 100%. I know Bill's talked about this on S&M, but Roku has a channel called the SNL Vault that just randomly puts up sketches. And that Totino's pizza roll one that she does with Kristen Stewart. Her name's escaping me. Kristen Stewart. Thank you. Oh my God. So freaking funny. And such a commentary on so many different things. Just, and we weren't seeing a lot of girl on girl kissing on TV, not even at 11:30 back then. And that wasn't that long ago, but we've come a long way. But oh my gosh, so fun. All those Totino's ads. She's just brilliant. I watched the one where she gets the little kit that's supposed to keep her busy during the Super Bowl or whatever.
Yeah, while her hungry guys are watching the game.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So funny.
Oh,
she's just brilliant. Brilliant.
What a delight. And you go look up some of the pre-tapes, like Santa Baby with Ryan Gosling, to me is a stone cold classic. It has like Tarantino, David Lynch vibes as a pre-tape. There was one that I love called Awkward Flirts with Kyle Mooney, where they're these two people who live in the same apartment building and they kind of bump into each other and they're kind of awkwardly flirting and everything. And she and Kyle just work so well together. She works well with every cast member, every host. There's a funny one that revolves around a Fleetwood Mac song that she and Paul Rudd just do stupid dancing to. They play a couple that's divorcing and they're hashing out logistics of their divorce. I could go on and on, but Vanessa Bear, welcome to the Hall of Fame as far as Bill, Shari, and I are concerned. We'll see what the voters have to say, but we do have a consensus here on the podcast. So Shari, I actually want to go back to you, try to even out these numbers a bit and get another one of your choices here.
Okay, I'm going to do another writer because again, I'm a big believer in writers, and this particular writer, this is her final time on the ballot. Please, people, listen to me. This woman is so talented. And talk about a career after the show. Still writing, amazing. And she's such an inspiration to other female writers. Tina Fey has said time and time again that this woman is the reason that Tina is who Tina is. And you guys already know who I'm talking about, I'm sure. The fabulous, fantastic Paula Pell. Again, I didn't realize, I knew who she was, but the more I listened and the more I read stuff, the more I was like, oh my gosh, this woman is incredible. She wrote this and this and this. Debbie Downer. I think she worked extensively with Tina on a number of things. Her handprint was just all over that. What is it? Bill, you're the historian. Was it like the late 80s for Paula? Early 90s?
Late 90s.
Late 90s. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was all over that. And even she's come back recently, and I bet you she had something to do with that Tampon Farm song. I mean, I can see her totally helping Kate McKinnon figure that out.
Was she in that sketch, Bill? Was Paula in it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She is, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just a genius. And, let's get her in. Let's get her in. I want to see more writers. They deserve to be in there. And she was, like I said, so many women that I've heard interviewed from SNL talk about Paula. Whether it's, I believe I've heard Heidi Gardner mention her recently. Like I said, Tina and Amy. They're all inspired by her. She's such an inspiration. She really deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, for sure.
Yeah, well said. Paula had her number 15 on my list, so not a total lock, but as of now, like in. Bill, if it wasn't for Paula, well, maybe I shouldn't say this, but Paula had her thumbprint on when SNL, when recurring sketches and like big recurring characters were the thing. Paula had such an imprint on all of these in the late 90s.
Yeah, I mean, and she's on my ballot too. She had her hands in cheerleaders. She had her hands in the Culps. She was such an important part of the Lewinsky scandal, love it or hate it. The way that SNL covered it, she had a lot of the writing that had to do with that as well. All of the boy band stuff, like the Teen Pulse that we got with the early 2000s and things like that. So, and yeah, she, like Shari says, she's still around. She's fantastic on the show Girls 5 Ever. If you haven't seen that, I highly recommend that. A lot of SNL fingerprints on that show as well. So, yeah, I mean, this is a no-brainer to me. She is probably around 14 or 15 for me just because of how deep the ballot is, but she made it. I don't think you can talk about... I'm one of these people who wants all these writers in as well, because the seasons where it's bad writers, it's a bad show. And we've seen that for 50 years where it's a common denominator. So when she was on the show writing on a consistent basis, the show was very good. Not a coincidence. So definitely one for me.
Awesome. So that's a yes for Bill, a probably leaning toward yes for me, and of course a yes for Shari. Given that it's Paula's final time on the ballot, that might be the thing that probably keeps her on my ballot, honestly. So I think Paula's pretty safe on my ballot for now. So we'll call that another consensus. We have 3 consensus in a row right here. We kind of started off without a little group thing, but it tends to happen because we have some kind of obvious people in here and stuff. But I'm liking this so far, and I'm going to share one of mine. I'm going to keep it in the writer category. And somebody who I am a little annoyed that this person is not yet in the SNL Hall of Fame. And it's somebody who I would really say this term kind of gets thrown around, but with SNL it's true because you hear other writers talk about this person. And Jack Handey is a writer's writer. You hear Conan O'Brien, you hear Robert Smigel, you hear Bob Odenkirk talk about Jack Handey. They all say Jack Handey was the most clever writer in the room. He was the best writer in the room. He had the most unique sensibilities, maybe some of the most unique sensibilities in SNL history. He had his own damn segment, Deep Thoughts, and Fuzzy Memories, and My Big Thick Novel. He had 3 different segments on SNL. That's you can't say that about a lot of writers. So I am submitting Jack Handy as one of my Stone Cold locks for the SNL Hall of Fame, and I'm now going to pull Bill's string on his back and let him ramble about Jack Handy.
Yeah, I mean, this is we've talked about this before, but it still holds true. That 86 to 92, 93 era, where it is a golden age with the cast. It is a super duper golden age with the writers, Odenkirk and Handy and Greg Daniels, Conan, my buddy Smigel, and there's just so many incredible writers that made this show work. And as you said, he is one of the more unique voices on the show. Some of the better sketches that we've ever seen. Giant Businessman is one of my all-time favorites with Phil Hartman and Tom Hanks. He had a big part with Sprockets, with Toonces, Tarzan, Tonto, and Frankenstein. So there's, anything, if you're watching late 80s, early 90s, besides the deep thought stuff, which, as you said, that's so important that his name was out there. Other than Smigel, after the original era, do we see that a lot? Not really. Like there's no segments like that. I guess Adam McKay had a moment.
Dan Bulla currently.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been a few weeks though. It's really new. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's really to have your own name on something as a writer on the show week after week was something to be said. So yeah, definitely on my ballot.
All right, Shari, do us proud, my friend.
It's a trifecta.
Yes.
Yes. Again, another one that I knew deep thoughts, of course, because late 80s, early 90s, college years, high school and college, that's the big time for SNL. And I love deep thoughts. Those were just absolutely a riot. And I can remember quoting them to my friends back in the day. But I didn't realize how many other things he wrote and how many people like Smigel. Zweibel talks about him as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was, even though Zweibel came before him, he talks about admiring the work that he did. And yeah, he was so intrinsic to that time period. And thank you again, SNL Hall of Fame, and thank you again, SNN, because I learned a lot about Jack Handy through both, and have a new admiration for him.
And I don't think I was the only one who, especially at my age, I was a teenager when I started watching SNL and Deep Thoughts. I thought Jack Handy was a pen name, and I thought it was a pen name for Al Franken. So I was convinced when I was a kid that I thought that was Al Franken's pen name because the name Jack Handy to a teenager sounds vaguely dirty.
100%.
So I thought that was just
in the same boat. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So it sounded like somebody's pen name. So I was delighted when I found out that there was a real person named Jack Handy, and he was so darn clever. So that's a consensus. Jack Handy is on all three of our ballots. Shari, I want to throw a challenge out to you. Look on your list who you have left and try to find one that you think Bill and I might not have.
Got it.
All righty.
I think this is a player who gets put in the second tier a lot, gets forgotten about, and she's been popping up in commercials and things lately, which I'm glad to see. I just think I wrote in my notes that she's just a great clutch player. She can come in the clutch and just make up sucky sketch, really funny. She just knows how to turn it just a little bit. She's so much fun. I just love Rachel Dratch, and I know she's not everybody's cup of tea, but I've always liked her. Again, she was on in that time period that I was, really tuned in, and she's just so funny. I know everybody knows her for Debbie Downer, but she's all over the place. You look her up on YouTube. She's in so many sketches where you forget she's in them because she's a second or third. But then again, she can hold her own against a Jimmy Fallon, right, with the Boston Teens. I think she's funnier than Jimmy, but Bill and I have our feelings about Jimmy. We're in solidarity together. but she makes him funnier, I think. I love Rachel, but I don't, like I said, I don't know that she's everybody's cup of tea. So that's why I took your challenge, Thomas.
Okay, so Bill, did Shari succeed in the challenge that she was just presented, as far as picking something that neither of one of us might not have on our ballots?
She did for me. Yeah, I don't have Rachel on there. I think, when you're parsing the best of the best, and this is, you're making really difficult decisions, and you're looking deeper on their list, and she doesn't really have a lot of impressions. The ones that she does, she kind of inherited from Shari, who was so good at what she did, like the Barbara Walters and things like that. But I mean, she is somebody that I really did enjoy. I think Lovers is one of the best thing. Her and Will in those sketches, even though they did them a little bit too much, as was kind of the case back then. Her Abe Scheinwald was fantastic. Uh, so there are definite moments for her, and absolutely 100% Shari. She made Fallon better, which is not an easy thing to do. So. She's not on my ballot, but I can see the case for her for sure.
I agree that Rachel made Fallon better in those Boston teen sketches. I love Rachel. I had to nitpick a little bit with all these great people, and she didn't make my cut. So I guess Shari, congratulations on you succeeded on this challenge, because neither Bill nor I have Rachel on the list, but I love Rachel. Jeremy Dove and I just did an episode on 30 Rock on our Pop Culture 5 podcast, and I just had to talk about Rachel right away. Like, she just pops up in 30 Rock as different characters. Rachel, she'll come in on as a cat wrangler, as a weird blue man. She's just awesome. I love seeing her on these commercials. Her book is great if you haven't checked it out. So I'm a Rachel Dratch fan, but I'm also a fan of a lot of other people in SNL history. So Rachel does not make the cut. We'll see if the voters push Rachel in as well. Bill, I want to go back to you. Why don't you share a name with us?
Yeah, I'm going to go with perhaps the best utility player in the history of the show. Was on for 8 seasons, and famously is the only person to ever be, well, maybe not the only person, but one of the few people to be fired and then invited back to the show because of his friend Will Ferrell. I'm talking about Chris Parnell, of course. He had such an incredible run. Never the star of the show. He was behind Will Ferrell. He was behind Molly. But he always showed up and kind of straddled those two, the silver era of the late 90s and the third golden era that we got with Andy and stuff. And of course, we get Lazy Sunday with that. I tried to put him in when we were on the SNN last week, Thomas, with the best collabs of digital shorts, and Mike Murray wouldn't let me do it. But
that was I was there. That was kind
I know you were there.
If we're calling Parnell a musician,
listen, man, when he went to the update desk and started rapping, I mean, did you ever hear a white guy rap
that's
like
fair.
that outside
Parnell's
of a musician?
one of our all-time greatest white rappers. I'll definitely give him that.
Yeah. So I think his time is underrated. I got to meet him this summer, and it was such a thrill to be able to talk to him about stuff like Cowbell. And but yeah, I mean, just such a great resume for his show. I wish we would get him back in some form on the show.
Yeah, Chris Parnell is on my list. He's one of I have him as a soft lock, but he was like 11 out of the 12 pretty much like locks that I have. For all the reasons you mentioned, he's just such like the consummate glue guy, really. Like, I think one of the few that like Lauren probably realized that they had made a mistake by letting him go, and I'm sure they had people like Will Ferrell and pretty much the entire cast telling him as such. So yeah, Chris Parnell, very underrated, but just every sketch you see him in, he just kills it. Shari, what did you think of Chris Parnell?
So funny, because I was just talking with my colleague today about Chris Parnell, and she was saying he was one of her favorites. And I said that I liked him a lot too, and that I felt, again, another very underrated. got overshadowed, but definitely a utility player. Not on my ballot, but again, in my second 15 for sure. He was fantastic. Still showing up in things. I feel like I just saw him in something recently that I was watching. So he definitely
Probably.
pops
He's
up.
that kind of guy.
Yeah, he pops up in things a lot, and definitely just so funny. And again, he's kind of like Rachel in the way that throw him in the clutch, and he just saves it with a look or he's so funny that I can't. I have a terrible memory, like I said, where he's in the job interview and he's the mythical creature,
The centaur. Yep.
the
With Christopher
centaur.
Walken. Yeah.
Oh my goodness,
Classic.
that is a hoot, and he just carries that off so beautifully. So, and not in a very comfortable costume,
Right.
for sure, and just brilliant. Just
Yeah. And just the
definitely
Iceman.
very talented. I'd love to see him get in. I just didn't have room.
Just a numbers game for Shari.
Yeah, for
and Parnell
sure.
famously just kept it together during sketches. He didn't break. He just that's what they called him, the Iceman. If you look at the cowbell sketch, he, of course, Fallon, our buddy Jimmy Fallon, breaks. Horatio breaks, but Parnell's really just trying to keep it together. In a lot of other sketches where he should have broken too. So Chris Parnell on my ballot, on Bill's ballot, but not on Shari's ballot. Shari, I want to hear from you. Who else is on your ballot?
Okay. Let's get a female and a writer again. Can you tell my weakness, my soft spots?
That's great.
This is another writer that I didn't know a lot about, but I've been reading about her, and I know has a fairly decent part in the movie, which I still haven't seen. I know, how can I be a huge fan and not have seen it yet? But I'm too cheap to pay that $20 that they want right now for the rental, and I didn't get to it when it was in the theater because I had a bad cold. So yeah, so I didn't really know, but she was a big deal, and she was married to Lorne, and she was dating Dan Aykroyd at the same time. Whoa, pretty scandalous for back in the 70s. Well, I guess not really, right? Free love and all that. I'm talking about the fabulous Rosie Schuster. She was all over those first 5 years and didn't get talked about a lot. I don't remember hearing a lot about her till recently. And she was I guess right there, making comments on things with Lorne, and she had a lot of input, and she wrote a lot of great sketches. So definitely someone. I don't think, who knows if she'll make it in. I think people don't really know her name. I hope they're like me and they're learning about her, and that maybe the movie is going to push people to vote for her a little more, because I think she's an unsung hero, and I can't. Again, my terrible memory. I can't come up with sketches right off the top of my head like Bill and Thomas can, but she is amazing, and I want to see her get more of her due, just like Paula.
Yeah, I think Rosie helped Bill. I think Rosie helped come up with the Fred Garvin sketch. I think that was one of her biggies. Rachel Sennett did a great job of playing Rosie in the movie. Depicted Rosie as a very, very comedically minded, had her stuff together. Was almost like she was like a Belushi whisperer. She was kind of that way for a lot of the cast. Bill, what's Rosie's place in SNL history here?
Well, she's definitely on my ballot as well, and to Shari's point, I think the movie will help because she's so prominent. Out of all the writers that are kind of portrayed in the movie, she's kind of front and center for a lot of the stuff because of her relationship with Lorne and the whole runner that goes on in the movie. She's so important to the show. Her and Ann Beats working together. She has the hard hat sketch, which is also shown in the movie, even though it wasn't the first episode. Kind of flipping the script on the way men and women treat each other out in the wild. And, if you want, we talked about Uncle Roy a little bit earlier. She helped write that. So if you want to be offended by the Uncle Roy sketch, blame Rosie and Ann. There was a lot there. And she got in the first show. One of the very first things we see on the show is the pre-tape with New Dad, with Chevy and Dan. And she wrote that. So she gets into the very first episode of SNL when not a lot of people could say that, with how much of a variety feel the show had. And played a big part in the show for the next 4 or 5 years. So Definitely should be in. Hope she gets in because of her coverage in the movie.
Rosie is not on my list, but it is one with Herb Sargent where I will kind of like put her for consideration because I just know how important she was to the history of the show, and that can't be discounted. So Rosie Schuster, again, not on my list, on Shari and Bill's ballots. And I would actually be really happy if she got, and even though I may or may not vote for her, I would be happy if Rosie got into the SNL Hall of Fame. I want to share another lock from my list, and it's been bugging me since last season because I have this person as a top 10 cast member of all time. And there might be some recency bias against her, and maybe why not she didn't get in on first ballot last year. But Kate McKinnon is a stone cold 100% lock of locks on my ballot. One of the most talented sketch performers to ever grace the Studio 8H halls. Just impressions, original characters, just such like a force of a presence and a performer. And I was baffled. I had told Jamie when the ballot came out, we were kind of like, oh, so what do you think's going to happen? And I told him like, oh yeah, Kate's a lock, like absolutely. So I just kind of took it for granted, like, oh yeah, Kate's going to get in. And then when he shared the results with me last year, I was like, what? What? Kate's not in? So I think the voters should right this wrong this year. Kate McKinnon absolutely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Bill, was this recency bias against Kate? Is that kind of what we saw here?
Yes, and I will admit she was not on my ballot last year for that very reason.
Okay.
I thought it was a little too soon. Just because, I mean, make the sports references again. Guys are left off the ballot until their 5th year of retirement to kind of let it marinate and see where it plays. Now, Kate is obviously an all-time SNL cast member. Mount Rushmore of female cast members, for sure. So she is on my ballot this year, but she was not on my ballot last year just because of how close it was to her leaving the show. So I think that might have played into it, and I think, Thomas, that we'll probably see different results this year.
Yeah, Jay, maybe if just a handful of voters did what you did last year, I think Kate's going to get in. You remember that, Bill, when Clayton Kershaw doesn't get in on the first ballot, even though he's
getting in on the first ballot.
Okay,
but if he was on the ballot in January and he just retired, then probably not.
Okay, we'll see. Yeah, you remember that though, because I think Kate's as good of a SNL performer as Clayton Kershaw was
That's fair.
Pitcher. Yeah, a little baseball nerd. I'm a little LA Dodgers nerd. Shari, is Kate McKinnon on your ballot?
Oh, this was a hard one. She is not, only because it's not so much that she's a newer nominee, but there's others that have been on this ballot for so long. There's other really great women on us. I mean, really great people, but, I've got that soft spot for women. And, I've been watching like several of the ones on my ballot kind of languish. And so I'm giving a little more love because I know we're not supposed to think this way. She's going to get in. I mean, I feel pretty confidently, and I've said it on the water cooler a number of times. She's like at 62%. Mm-hmm. I can't believe she's not going to get in, especially with having just been on, 5 months, 6 months ago when she was on last season, and she did such a great bang-up job. I guess it was a year ago because I think she was on the Christmas episode. I know she hasn't been doing a lot. We were talking about, again, was talking with my colleague. She hasn't done a lot lately, but I think she's a shoo-in. I think she's going to get in. So I was like, okay, I guess if all of us think, she's going to get in, then she won't if we don't vote for her. But again, it's just such a deep ballot, and I just see others on here that aren't getting the love. So I wanted to throw my love in other directions.
Yeah.
If she doesn't get in this year, I'll vote for her.
Okay, that's a promise. Season. That's a promise from Shari. Okay, yeah, that it's interesting because you vote for a Hall of Fame or something. There's different schools of thought as far as voting. I'm of the school of thought that if somebody's new on the ballot, but they're like an all-timer in this way, to me, they jump other people who have already been on the ballot. But that's just me. That's just kind of how I vote. So, like, using that example, like if Clayton Kershaw or when Mike Trout is on the ballot when he retires, to me, he jumps other people who have been on the ballot who are more fringe. That's just the way I think of it. Others may not, and I think that's understandable. When you have a finite amount of votes, you have different schools of thought. So even though I was pretty, I had a harsh tone of voice, I think, when I when I talked about Kate, because I just love Kate. But I understand that school of thought. Shari, who's the next person on your ballot?
Okay, we're talking about people who don't get the love I think they deserve. Uh, Definitely one that had his time on SNL, was popular, but didn't get the bright light that he should have. But he's gone on to greatness. And I just think he's a riot. He's so over the top. He's fearless. That's what I have in my notes. He's a fearless performer. He's not afraid to do anything. And I'm talking about, he just kills me. The great Tracy Morgan. And just so funny. And again, he's been on the SNL Vault a lot with his Safari and several of his other impressions and things. He's not afraid to do anything. He's fearless. And I don't know that there's that many performers that are that fearless. He just doesn't care. He's going to go for the laugh. He'll insult you. He'll talk about your baby. He doesn't care. He just doesn't. He just goes for the jugular. And I love that about him. I think he gets forgotten a lot. And he's so funny and so quick. And like I said, so willing to go places nobody else would go, especially during the time he was on. You know, he would say things that I'm surprised he got away with it, actually. So yes, Tracy Morgan is definitely a lock on my ballot for sure.
Yeah, Tracy Morgan's definitely a one of one as far as like a personality on SNL. There's not a lot of people quite like Tracy Morgan, though I think he maybe did get overshadowed by a relatively stacked cast when he was on, but he had his own lane too. So, Bill, does Tracy Morgan do anything for you as far as Hall of Fame candidacy?
No, I think he just kind of misses for me. Kind of for the same reason that Rachel misses, because again, as you said, like, it's such a deep bench, and he doesn't have a lot in the vault that you can look at beyond what you already know. Now, I will say, Astronaut Jones is low key one of my favorite sketches of all time. I will watch that. I don't care how many times I've seen it in a row. If it comes on, I'm watching it because it's just so damn funny, and it just personifies Tracy. His work on 30 Rock is fantastic. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to love about Tracy. He just doesn't quite get there for me this time.
Yeah, pretty low key. One of an underrated duo in SNL history is Tracy Morgan and Britney Spears. When she hosted, they worked really well together. Yeah. So no, Tracy, I love Tracy. I'm a big 30 Rock fan. He doesn't make the cut for me. But I'll always enjoy Tracy in anything. And it's like Rosie Schuster. Like, if Tracy made it, I would be so happy for him. So Tracy Morgan was one of Shari's picks. Bill, your list is kind of dwindling. I think you only have 5 left. You want to share one with us?
Yeah, I've got to talk about one of the people I talked with you about, Thomas. Not this season, but last, with Marty Short as a host. As my friend John Schneider would say, not one of the best cast members because of his limited time on the show. I don't necessarily agree with that, but his hosting gigs are all-timers, especially in 2012. Like, they're just, and 1996. He has so many moments in those shows. He's in the first Celebrity Jeopardy. He brings back Ed Grimley a bunch of times. He's in a Roxbury. You're a Rat Bastard, Charlie Brown. It just go on and on and on. And when he came back with Steve, was just amazing 2 years ago. I think he is one of the locks to come in and host this season because we need to get some five-timers in. I think we're going to see him and Steve come back. He's just so great. One of the few Ebersol era cast members to cross over into the Lorne world, probably because of their friendship. But he's just an all-timer, and he's one of the funniest people on the planet. So Marty Short is on my list.
Yeah, Bill, I agree with John as far as Marty's place as a cast member on the SNL hierarchy, but I agree with you as far as putting Marty in the SNL Hall of Fame as a host. And I think one other thing too is he's responsible for maybe two of the best monologues that I've ever seen on the show. And having a great monologue as a host, that scores extra points for me, for sure. That coupled with some of the great sketches that you mentioned, just what a dynamic performer Marty was. And again, just looking at him as a host, because he was a good cast member, but just on the strength of his hosting gigs, I think Marty should be in the Hall of Fame. I have him not in the Kate McKinnon, Buck Henry tier, but I do have Marty a little below that, but he's pretty safely in on my list. Do we have consensus, Shari? How do you feel about Marty Short and his Hall of Fame candidacy?
I'm sorry, guys.
Oh, no.
No, I do love Martin. He's hilarious. But again, this is a subjective game and a game of numbers, as you keep saying, Thomas. And he probably would have been in my next 15, but just didn't make this. Just too many talented folks. Just too much choice.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Do you, Bill? Do you think voters will weigh in his time as a cast member and a host? Like, what do you think? Get into the mind of a voter. Do you think, like, subconsciously that might play a part here?
Yeah, I think especially casual fans or not as hardcore as we are will probably mix those two things together. Probably think that he was on the show a lot longer than he was, so that might help him in the long run getting into the Hall of Fame. Because, I mean, you think about the characters that he had. Maybe he was just on for that 1 year, but all of the stuff that he brought, like synchronized swimming and Ed Grimley and Irving Cohen. Like, there's a lot of really, really great stuff there as a cast member that probably gets mixed up in people's minds as far as when was he hosting, when was he a cast member. So I think it definitely helps him.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that too. So Martin Short, it'll be interesting. I think it could go either way with him this time around. I'll be fascinated to see. Shari, we're heading down the home stretch. Who do you have for us next?
Okay, I am going to throw a musical guest in. And we have talked extensively on the water cooler about the curse of the musical guest and how they just can't seem to make that 10% very often to even stay on for the next season, let alone get in. We've only got, one in currently? I think Paul Simon is in. I don't think any other musical guests are.
Yeah, I think it's just Paul Simon.
And I really don't think my next nominee is going to get in either, but gosh darn it, I'm a Gen Xer. They were a huge part of my youth. They were incredible every time they were on SNL. And freaking Bono is a rock star of rock stars. And I couldn't find many of the performances, but I remember them vaguely from when I was younger. He just lit up that stage with his band. And he's just They're an amazing band, and so I put them on my ballot because I don't think musical guests get enough love. So I had to put on at least one. I put on two, and I know it's fruitless, but I did it anyways. So U2.
U2, one of my all-time favorite bands. I don't know how you feel about. I don't actually know much about your music tastes, Bill, and your music taste when it comes to SNL. So what do you think of that U2? As far as SNL goes,
my musical taste is very eclectic. Pretty much the only thing I don't really care for is country. But even, I mean, somebody like Garth Brooks kind of surpasses that. So the case can be made for almost anything. And I do agree with Shari that they don't get enough love. But here's the problem, and this is what I think of any musical guest that's on the ballot. When you go to their concerts, you ask for the same thing. Play the damn hits. And they didn't. I mean, they played a few. They played I Will Follow. They played Beautiful Day. But they're hurt by the fact, it's kind of like the Prince syndrome, where they didn't come in their ultra prime. Now, early 2000s, they're still huge. But they're not there for Joshua Tree. They're not there in the early 90s when they're the biggest band on the planet. So that hurts them. They're not playing a lot of their hits after, they're on 4 times, and they really only had a few songs that were, super popular. Mm-hmm. You're coming on SNL and only playing 2 songs or 3 songs. You need to play what people know. Coldplay knows this. Tom Petty knew this. McCartney knew this. So I think that hurts their candidacy for me. So they're not on my ballot, but I can completely understand for how big they are and were that they could be on a lot of people's ballots.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I'm a massive U2 fan, a top 10 all-time band for me. But I just think if they would have played SNL after the Joshua Tree came out, and then after Achtung Baby came out, then they would have built that momentum. They could have played like I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For, Mysterious Ways. They could have like got those massive hits in and built up momentum. They didn't make their first appearance until they had already been established almost 20 years. I will say this positively though. That performance of I Will Follow at the Good Nights goes down in history in SNL to me as one of the all-time great performances. You had Bono going into the crowd. You had him jumping on some woman and like making her night. You had the cast members on home base just like dancing along. Like Bono puts on a performance. That performance of I Will Follow to me is one of the greatest in SNL history. So they have that going for them. But I think I kind of agree with Bill in the sense that like they just kind of missed, like SNL missed them in their prime. And to me, there's another musical guest that takes precedence. If we're talking about let's put a musical guest in the SNL Hall of Fame, there's one musical guest that I have as a lock that I think should be in. So I would vote for this person ahead of U2 or any other musical guest. And until this person's in the SNL Hall of Fame, this is his last year on the ballot, I won't be voting for any musical guest. It's Dave Grohl. So I think Dave Grohl should be in. If any musical guest, in my opinion, in SNL history should be in the SNL Hall of Fame, it's Dave Grohl. He's appeared with Nirvana. He's appeared with Foo Fighters. He's played with Tom Petty. he's been in sketches. He's done a great job in sketches. I'm surprised he hasn't hosted. That's the only thing missing for Dave Grohl. Like I really wish he would have hosted after all these years. I don't know if he recently got into a little bit of controversy, which he's a rock star, man. In my day, when I was growing up, rock stars had controversy. Like they weren't angels. So I think that's fine. But I mean, it's a bad thing that he did. But as far as like entertainment and rock star and SNL Hall of Fame, I don't know if that should really hurt. I mean, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go Google the controversy that Dave Grohl is involved in. But I've said my piece numerous times on this show about Dave Grohl. Shari, was Dave Grohl the one who you were referring to as far as another musical guest that had your vote?
100%. I freaking love Dave Grohl. And I didn't know about the controversy till I heard about it. I think from you, Thomas. Somebody mentioned it. Oh, maybe it was JD when we were talking before water cooler. I looked it up, and it's sad to say, but in this Me Too era, what he did is pretty, I don't want to say it's okay because it's not, but compared to some of the things that are going on with famous dudes right now, and I'm certainly not going to hold it against him here because you got to separate the art from the artist.
And it was an extramarital affair. I don't want people to go to go other places when they brought it. It was like an extramarital affair and thing, So that's kind of what it was.
I don't think that should be a black mark against him here. He deserves to be in. more than anybody who's been on the ballot, just because of the number of times he's been on. It's like crazy. With like 3 different, with Petty, with Foo Fighters, with Nirvana, and wasn't there one other? Didn't he have another project that he was
Them
on
Crooked
with one
Vultures.
time?
Them Crooked Vultures. Yeah.
Them Crooked Vultures. I mean, that's got to be some kind of record. He's amazing. And then he was just on recently with the Foo Fighters, and he appeared in that great Lake Beach sketch where he was a freaking riot. Let's get this guy in. This is it for him. Let's get Dave Grohl in. I think he totally deserves to be in as much as Paul Simon for what he's done over the decades. He's a stalwart. So yeah, I 100% agree, Thomas.
Bill, help us out. Let's put Dave Grohl in the SNL Hall of Fame.
I will preface this by saying I am one of the biggest Foo Fighters fans out there. So, or should I say, Foo Fighters. But this goes back to my point about, and yes, he's on my ballot, absolutely. But this goes back to my point, play the hits. Smells Like Teen Spirit, Learn to Fly, All My Life, Times Like These, Best of You, The Pretender. Can I interest you in any of those songs? Like this is, the kind of the history of music, rock music over the last 30 years. He's such a big part of it. This is a head scratcher of all head scratchers that he is not in. This is not even up for debate, in my opinion. He should be in. Let's get him in.
Agreed. Yep. And an all-time great performance, if we're looking at moments in SNL history, back in 2020 is the day that they officially announced Joe Biden had won the election. Foo Fighters was the musical guest, and their performance of Times Like These, like I still like it chokes me up. It's one of the few SNL performances that has almost like brought me to tears. That performance. So like that to me, that's like one of the gold standards as far as SNL musical guest performances. So come on, voters. His last time on the ballot, if there's any musical guest that should be in, it's Dave Grohl. Let's do the right thing and vote him into the SNL Hall of Fame. Shari, I want to go back to you as we head toward the finish line here. Who's your next one?
Okay, I am going to talk about the great host. I don't have a lot of hosts on my ballot. She is another one that I hadn't thought about, again, till I listened to discussion on the fabulous podcasts that I listen to, SNN and SNL Hall of Fame particularly. And I'm talking about the first female host. That alone should get her in. The fabulous Candice Bergen, who still shows up for Five-Timer sketches and is such an expert at dry humor, at balancing that perfect bit of dryness with the over-the-top wackiness of somebody like, say, an Aykroyd, and just putting that total straight woman role. And then there's, of course, the great slip-up with Gilda where she calls her the wrong name, which is like a classic moment in SNL history. I'm talking about Candice Bergen. This is her last time on the ballot. Let's get this groundbreaking lady in. She has been such an influence on probably all of the female comedians who've come since, certainly many on the SNL stage. She's an inspiration. She's just a comic genius in a very subtle way. And, the first female 5-timer, I believe, I'm sure. So, yeah, let's get Candice in before she's not on the ballot anymore.
Yeah, Bill, Candy's last time on the ballot. What say you?
Yeah, I think she suffers a little bit from Buck Henry syndrome. I mean, she did come back in the late 80s, but those episodes weren't great. But, again, as Shari says, first female host. Comes back twice in 6 weeks. Like, that's insane. Could you imagine that today? One of the best episodes of all time in her season 2, her season 2 Christmas episode. Just so many great sketches she's part of. She's in Jaws, Killer Trees, Leighton Elf. It's amazing to me that she's not in. She laid the groundwork when females, both in cast and in hosting, were not getting their fair shots. And her and Lily really kind of led the way in those early years for hosting gigs. And it really is the first episode of SNL that feels like SNL. A lot of people have said that, but it's the truth. If you watch those first 3 episodes, they're not the SNL that you know today. You watch that Candy episode, and it feels like, okay, some of it's dated, but all the beats are there 50 years later, and she was the first one that we could see that with. And the fact that she does come back, and we get to see her, we just saw her last year with Emma Stone. It's such a fantastic testament to her history with the show, and let's do her right. Absolutely.
You know what? I think you two kind of swayed me a little bit. She was on the cusp for me, but I think she's going to get my vote. So I'm going to put her from a maybe to a let's put Candy in the SNL Hall of Fame. And actually, first of all, she hosted one of the greatest episodes of all time. It was a Christmas episode. I think it was in season 2, Bill. Yeah.
Season 2, yeah.
Yeah. That was one of the all-time great SNL episodes. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. It's a Christmas episode from season 2. If you want to know about Candy's comedic timing and how she can really thrive in sketch work, I'm actually going to go to one of her late 80s sketches. And it's the Anne Boleyn sketch that she did with Phil Hartman. That was a great sketch. It was just Phil Hartman and Candice Bergen, and she works so well with Phil. She has incredible timing. She plays Anne Boleyn, who's being held and she's gonna get beheaded. And Phil comes in and talks to her about it. And Anne Boleyn, she has all these questions about the logistics of specifics of what's gonna happen and the aftermath, and it's just hilarious. So I think even though she's known for her 70s episodes, I think that Anne Boleyn sketch from I think it was 87 is a perfect showcase for Candice Bergen. So they swayed me. Shari and Bill swayed me. I am putting Candice Bergen in the SNL Hall of Fame here. Yes, and Shari's clapping, and it's a beautiful day. Let's put Candy in on her last attempt at the SNL Hall of Fame. I want to go talk about kind of a lock and who I don't think it's a lock on my ballot. I don't think this person's going to get in for much the same reason why a previous lock of mine didn't get in. But I have Adie Bryant on my ballot. I think one of the more, she's synonymous with Kate McKinnon, but she had her own vibe. She had she's just a wonderful personality, just incredible timing. Just this warm presence on the show, a lot of really fun sketches, a lot of fun characters. I think her impact on the show was huge. I don't think she's going to get in. She's probably going to get less percentage of the vote than even Kate did. But just kind of doing the research, I had Rebecca North on. It was actually the most recent episode. She was Adie was the final episode of the season, and just kind of working it out with Rebecca and going back and looking at Adie's work. I feel comfortable with wanting to put her in the SNL Hall of Fame, and it's just a different mindset because I look at somebody like Adie and she kind of jumps other people for me who have been on. No offense to Rachel Dratch or somebody like that, but I just think Adie was maybe a stronger performer than Rachel, so that's why Adie might jump somebody like that. For me, I can see different schools of thought though, so I know there probably won't be consensus. This is one where I feel like I'm going to be the only one who has Adie on my list, but I don't know. We'll see. Bill, what do you think of Adie's candidacy?
Yeah, much for the same reasons we talk about Kate, but even more so because I think Kate is a once-in-a-generation talent. Adie is certainly up there, and, talk about the women taking over the show. I mean, this is a huge part of this, having Kate and Adie and Cecily lead the show. I mean, you can't put any of the male cast members even close to those three for the last decade leading up to 2022. And I can see her getting in at some point. But this is one of those situations to me that I need to let this kind of simmer. I need to kind of let it play out, see where she falls in. I do think you're probably right, Thomas, that she is ahead of somebody like Rachel, Sherry O'Terry, somebody like that. But I want to see, as a couple years pass, where she would fit into the whole, fabric of the show and the history of the show. So she's not on my ballot this time, but I can see the argument for her.
Yeah, Shari, does 80 being real recent and other people being on the ballot like in years past like play into it for you?
Yes, she is one of my all-time favorites, but I just had a couple others I want to see get in before her. She's another one that will probably be on my ballot next year, depending on how things shake out, how many people get in this year, and I hope there's more than 3. Last year, 3 got it. Let's double that at least. So yeah, 80 is not there for me. I do love. She's a fantastic. Another clutch. She's just throw her into anything, and she can do it so funny. I've watched that again on the vault, that Halloween one with her and Cecily, and
Yes.
oh, so funny. And she steals that for me. I think I like her even a tiny bit more than Kate, though I have to agree with Bill that Kate is a once in a generation because of all her impressions and all her characters. But for me, 80s, like Thomas, you talked about favorites as opposed to the best.
Mm-hmm.
And 80 would be a favorite for me, whereas Kate is the best. She's awesome, and I give you my word, she'll be on my season 7 ballot. But I could not fit her in here. There's too many others that I like just a touch, that have been on it a lot longer.
Yeah. So judging by this 3-person sample size, little baby 80 will probably have to wait. But Shari, who do you have? I think you have 3 left. Who do you want to talk about now?
I'm going to talk about a terrific cast member from the first 5 years that just gets short shrift and, very sad. So funny. Her daughter's doing big things now. I was hoping that might bring her on to a previous episode, but alas, no Lorraine. And I'm talking about Lorraine Newman. I really didn't think about her a lot, but again, thanks to, as Bill says, a million ways to watch sketches, I've been seeing all of the genius things, even in that Bassomatic sketch that everybody gives Dan all the cred. She's in there, and just that look she gives the camera is so classic. And she does a lot of that. And as the daughter in the Coneheads, she can steal it. She steals it sometimes. She's so brilliant. And my vote is definitely for Lorraine. She's not very. I think she's got like 32% of the vote. Let's get her in, people. She's in the 5. Garrett was just below her. I feel terrible. He's not on my ballot, but again, these are the original 5. These are in the original 5 seasons. The show would not be here without the writers, the cast members. Those first 5 seasons, they made it all happen. It's the reason it's still here. So, yeah, Lorraine Newman, a definite lock for me.
Yeah, Bill, talk about someone who probably got like overshadowed by her fellow castmates. Lorraine Newman was maybe the first cast member who that happened to. I would say, well, it was Garrett in a lot of ways too, but I do think Lorraine has a pretty good case here.
Yeah, I mean, Lorraine is on my ballot as well. And I think, the narrative for so long was that she didn't do anything on the show. And it's kind of ludicrous when you do go back and watch. Yeah, she isn't getting the kind of screen time that Gilda's getting. Jane's on Weekend Update. And Lorraine famously has admitted she didn't want to do recurring characters. She didn't want to. So that hurt her in a lot of ways in a time when the show was really pushing to bring characters back on week after week after week. So that did hurt her. But as you look at her work, I'm heartened by the last, decade or so, where people have really started to seem to appreciate what Lorraine did on the show. She does have so many great moments. Some that Shari brought up. I love the Exorcist sketch with Richard Pryor. I think that's one of her best performances. The Godfather therapy. Belushi gets all the credit for doing his Brando, but her doing Shari is very important to the flow of that sketch. And probably one of my favorite moments of SNL 40 is having her come on and be in the Californians and melding these 2 eras together where she's the original Valley girl and, brings in Shari to do the Californians with the current cast at that time. Yeah, one of my favorites of all time, and definitely deserving as one of those original cast members.
Yeah, Lorraine's someone who I developed a newfound respect for when I did the research, and I had the guys from the Not Ready for Primetime Project on, Brad and Gary, talking about Lorraine, and just going back and rewatching her stuff. And as Shari said, like even if it was just like a look that she would give or something that you can't quite get audio for, and like you just have to kind of watch her performance. She did a lot of little things on the show that I developed a newfound respect for. And by the way, Lorraine is Bobby Moynihan's favorite SNL cast member of all time. So if that's not somebody who we all love and respect, who watched Lorraine and has that much admiration from her, then I think that should tell you a lot about Lorraine and her contributions to the show. She doesn't make my list, sadly, after I said all that. She's not on my ballot, but she's very close, and I could actually see myself voting for her next year, depending on how everything shakes out. Again, kind of just a numbers game for me, but I definitely have, especially over the last few years, have like a really newfound respect for Lorraine's contributions. There's someone who I want to talk about. I don't know, since, again, a very recent person. I don't know that this person's going to get in the host category. But to me, he's already an all-timer kind of host. And even though he probably has more hosting gigs left in his future, that doesn't mean to me that he's not a Hall of Famer already. And so I want to submit Adam Driver as on my ballot as one of my votes. To me, he's already one of the top dozen hosts of all time. He's put in classic sketches. Of course, we all love the Star Wars, the Undercover Boss ones, the absolutely classic Prospector, what was it in the I forgot what the sketch was actually called, but he's doing the Career Day, so plays the old Prospector in Career Day, but Adam just kind of just owns the screen. He's a very serious and intense guy, but a lot of it's a wink because a lot of it he does that with a lot of like comedy behind it. Like he knows that it's funny to be that intense in certain situations, so he plays it up. He and Andrew, one of my favorite sketches of last season, Beep Beep, that was awesome. So Adam to me already has all these Hall of Fame moments, has great monologues, by the way, too. One where he's just kind of like, I'm going to act casual now, and I'm going to be casual. And then he's just really intense, like as he's trying to be casual. That's a great monologue. So to me, Adam's already checked all the boxes for a Hall of Famer. I don't hold it against him that he's still young enough to probably host a bunch more times. To me, he's already a Hall of Famer. So just from my viewpoint, I'm going to say Adam Driver should be in the SNL Hall of Fame for me. Shari, what do you think of Adam Driver?
He's another one that would probably have been in my second 15. I do think he's tremendous, and he works well with so many different cast members. He was just on last season. I definitely can see him coming back and becoming like a Steve Martin, Alec Baldwin type host. I like that he's a serious actor, but he comes and just cracks everybody up. So definitely, I could see myself voting for you. He might be another one for season 7. We'll see. We'll see how many of mine get in, how much room I have. But yeah, definitely a great pick, Thomas. Adam is terrific.
Well, I said all that, assuming that he wouldn't get in for a lot of reasons. Bill, what do you make of his candidacy right now as we stand?
I think he's probably the best recurring host in this era. So, people who we don't get to see a lot come back, like, John Hamm, who's on this ballot as well, and Timberlake and things like that. They've been gone a while. He, in quick succession, has, kind of made himself into this walk-in Baldwin hybrid of, serious actor who comes on and doesn't mind, getting in the mud and being really silly and wacky. He is not on my ballot because it's not even really the recency bias or that he could come back a lot. He was pretty high on the SNN's all-time host countdown, and justifiably so. But when we don't have John Hammond yet, when we don't have a couple of these other hosts that we may get to tonight or we may not, I think he has to be pushed down just a little bit for me. So if he comes back this year and hosts for a fifth time, joins the Five Timers Club, I'm not going to be mad. I'm always excited to see him come back. As you said, the Beep Beep is probably top 3 sketch from last season for me as well. So, yeah, love Adam, but didn't quite make it this time.
Yeah, I agree that he's probably the best host of this era, though, and that says a lot. And when the dust settles, when we're talking about this, and when we're doing this podcast in pill form, like 15 years, 20 years from now, we'll have the dust will have settled, and we'll say Adam Driver's like definitely a Hall of Famer. But maybe his story, his SNL story, is still being written, so that's probably a big consideration. Shari, I think you have 2 left. So Bill and I have 1 each left. Shari, you have 2. So let's hear from you.
Okay, I'm going to talk about a hilarious sketch performer that's been mentioned a little bit. Very, very big during her time. Very larger than life characters. Her terrific Barbara Walters just nailed it. I'm talking, of course, of Shari O'Terry. She's another one of those ladies that I don't think gets the credit she should. She steals every scene she's in. She stands up against the likes of Will Ferrell. Not an easy thing to do with her little tiny self against his big tall self. But she does it, and she does it with the cheerleaders. She does it. I was watching her in I think it was a prom sketch with him, where she's just super kooky and super funny. As the office flirt, she with John Goodman, her body language, the way that she uses her body to just convey, a sleazy sexuality of a lot of her characters. It's crazy. Chris Kattan, they're the Zimmermans? I think it's the Zimmermans. She just kills me. She's so funny. She's so over the top. She's another one who's just not afraid. She'll lick the camera if she has to. She doesn't care. She's so balls to the wall. And yeah, people fault her for not coming back. She's had a lot of personal issues. She was a great interview on Fly on the Wall. And she did talk about that a little. Life gets in the way sometimes. But that doesn't take away from all of the laughs she gave us in the years she was there. And I definitely think she deserves to be in. Do I think she's going to get in this season? Probably not. But I adore her, and I totally think she's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, Bill, does this absolute tornado of a performer, Shari O'Terry, crack your list?
She does not, and this is probably the hardest cut on this list for me because when I think of my college years, when I think of SNL at that time, it's Will and then it's Shari. Like, as deep a bench as that cast was, they're the 2 I think of. Morning Latte, cheerleaders, Colette Reardon, Rita Del Vecchio. Like, it just goes on and on and on. I think she's hurt a little bit by the fact that she left after 5 seasons in this kind of modern era. That's when people really start to hit their stride. She had already hit her stride, but if she had stayed maybe 7 or 8 years, I think, it's kind of that Lovitz, category where
Right.
she had stayed just a few more years, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. She would just be a lock. Love her, and she would certainly make it on another year where the ballot wasn't as deep as it is. But she just missed for me.
Yeah, this was my hardest cut as well, because a lot of people forget after season 20, we all know that it was the Saturday Night Dead conversation again. Then we got this new cast. Say Tim Meadows and Molly Shannon were like the holdovers, a few other Norman, but like it was basically like a lot of turnover in the cast. Will Ferrell and Shari O'Terry were really kind of like the breakout stars of those seasons, and a lot of people forget that because she just hasn't come back. So we've seen Dratch come back. We've seen Molly Shannon certainly come back. We've seen Will come back. Shari hasn't really come back to the show, so I think she gets lost in people's minds. But you go back and look at those episodes, and she's just like owns the screen completely. What a performer! But yeah, the hardest cut for me, like Bill said, and if it was a less stacked ballot, she would be. But definitely fond memories of Shari O'Terry. She should get her proper due because she was just an amazing performer. Bill, you have, I think we all three have one left on our ballot. So who's it going to be, Bill? Last person that you want to talk about?
Well, Thomas, I have to bring up the person that you and I talked about a few months ago. One of the reasons that I can't put somebody like Adam Driver in when somebody like this is still on the ballot that goes all the way back to 1982. Talking about Danny DeVito, of course, six-timer. We had such a great conversation talking about all of the stuff that he was able to do on the show, kind of the forgotten person of that, five-timer era with Baldwin and Goodman and Hanks and Walken. And, he hasn't come back to the show a lot. So again, that's a recurring theme with a lot of these hosts. Does it hurt them? But he's still in the zeitgeist because of Always Sunny. So I think that, his name recognition is still there, where it could help get him going on the ballot and hopefully get him into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Danny hasn't hosted since 1999. Still a lot of memorable moments. The best delicious dish, in my opinion, is Danny's. It's not Alec Baldwin's as much as I love that one. It's Danny's Y2K delicious dish, which is my favorite. Shari, how do you feel about Danny? Does he crack your ballot?
Alas, he does not. But everything Bill said is correct. He was amazing, and six hosting gigs, which is nothing to sneeze at. Just I didn't realize the sketches he was in. I went back and watched some to get ready for our water cooler episode, and he's a riot. One of my favorite actors. He's in so many great things, and Throw Mama from the Train. I just heard the SNL Nerds talking about another podcast I love. And I forgot, he's just been in so much funny stuff. I don't watch Always Sunny, and my friends at work keep shaking their fingers at me.
You should, yeah. They should be shaking their fingers at you because you shouldn't be watching it.
But yeah, not on my ballot, but definitely an excellent nominee and somebody I wouldn't be sad to see him get in because he every one of his episodes I think was fabulous.
Yeah, I love Danny. Always love when he pops up. Not on my ballot. No shade to Danny. I loved the episode that Bill and I did. It was an absolute blast going back and watching what we could from those episodes. But yeah, Danny just comes up a little short on my Hall of Fame ballot. So Shari, you have one left. Who do you got?
So this is another writer that I only knew a small bit about, but I've learned a lot more. I watched an hour interview with him to get ready for our water cooler episode. Thomas sent me an extensive list that he had got from John Schneider of the numerous, oh my God, it was huge. And I had no idea. He's another one of those first 5 season writers. Again, he's in the movie, so maybe he'll be more at the top of people's minds. I'm talking about Alan Zweibel. And if you're a fan, and if you're listening to this, you're probably a pretty huge fan, find an interview with this guy. He has stories on top of stories on top of stories, and he tells them like they happened yesterday. Talk about somebody with a good freaking memory. I mean, the detail that he recounts things, handing jokes up from underneath the desk and just things like that are remarkable to me. He was very crucial to Update as well. He wrote jokes for so many of the Update hosts. Again, first 5 years, we need to get as many of those those classic foundation builders as we can, because they laid the base that this show has gone on for 50 years. If it wasn't for them, and Lauren gives them all credit, the show wouldn't be here. So yeah, Alan Zweibel, somebody I really didn't know a lot about that I'm so grateful to all of you for schooling me, because he's just an amazing talent and a great storyteller. I'm so glad I caught an interview with him.
Yeah.
And he's got several. Like I think he really loves talking about his time on the show, and I think he has several books too. So just a fountain of SNL, classic SNL lore.
Yeah, Alan's one of those where I'm gonna have to put him in with like Herb Sargent and Rosie Schuster as like more proper consideration before I totally say no. Because you're right, especially his work on Update. Originally, he probably had the first Update joke. He wrote the first Update joke that really connected with people. The stamp that commemorates prostitution. It's 10 cents, but it's a quarter if you want to lick it. Like that was like the first Update joke that like really broke through. That ends up being like a funny part of the movie, commemorating that Update joke. So I really love Zweibel. His work with Gilda, too. Just he and Gilda were such a great team in those early years. And they just had such like a beautiful connection that Alan loves talking about. Yeah, if you ever go seek out a podcast that he's on, he really tells some great stories. Bill, I know you don't have Zweibel on your ballot. What was he? How much consideration did you give him?
Yeah, he was fairly close for me, and we've talked about this in previous roundtables. There's such a lack of information, and John over at the SNN has been putting in the work, trying to make this incredible spreadsheet of all the writing credits. We're spoiled today. We'll be on the Hot Take Show after a live SNL, and we'll know the writers before we wrap up. Some of this stuff is lost to time. Some of it's lost to, some of these people have passed, unfortunately. And, they remember that they think they wrote it with this person or that. There was no real record of it. And it's kind of sad because, obviously with Zweibel, you know what he did with Gilda. That's very famous. But there's stuff that's lost to how much of the show did he write. But he's crucial to this era, as Shari says. There's just so much that he put into the show. His collaborations with Gilda are just out of this world, and I just had to. I couldn't put him on because of so many other people, but he's certainly in consideration for me for next time.
Yeah, we all love Zweibel for sure, and I wouldn't hate it. Definitely wouldn't hate it if he got in. So I have one more. That I want to share. Bill and Shari, you've shared all 15 of your people on the ballot. I have one more on mine, and it's a surprising one to me, and one that didn't really speak to me until I did the research, until I talked to my guest and thought about, and I'm looking at it in the angle of kind of the weight that they carried and how instrumental this person was to helping keep the show alive during kind of a testy time. And I'm talking about the Ebersol era. And this person helped keep the show afloat big time in the Ebersol era and in more ways than he's even given credit for. And it's a surprise to myself. My lovely guest, Robin Duke, helped me hash this out. I'm actually going to vote for Joe Piscopo. And I didn't think I would coming into the season. But Piscopo is just so important to the history. One of the great unsung impressionists that SNL's had. Just amazing comedic timing. As Robin told me, just a wonderful teammate who was so committed to his craft. She said that she would see him practice backstage, watch videos and then practice his impressions and stuff. He really put in the work. He was a really giving scene partner. And he and Eddie, to a large extent, helped keep that era afloat. So Joe Piscopo gets my final vote, the damn near a lock, basically, for the Hall of Fame. Bill, I know for sure you're a big Piscopo fan, but it's interesting, he didn't quite crack your list.
Yeah, it's interesting because he's one of these people who his post SNL hurts him a lot. leave the politics out of it. Obviously, that's a major sticking point for some of these people. But he doesn't do a lot after this. He has this really strange thing. You can even see it in the 15th anniversary where he goes through this bodybuilder phase. He's not even making movies. He's just like committed to bulking up and becoming this.
He's on the cover of like Muscle Fitness magazine.
Right,
and stuff.
exactly. Like it was such a strange turn. And then he just kind of disappears, like more so than even a Lovitz or a Shari but he's integral to that time. And I don't think you can overstate how important he was to the show. Obviously, Eddie is this ultra superstar. He has just as much going on, even before Eddie really kind of finds his footing as a featured player in season 6. Joe is really the shining light of those early season 6 episodes with Saturday Night Sports and Paulie Herman. And again, as you said, Thomas, like all those impressions that he does, his Sinatra's fantastic. Jerry Lewis, Ted Koppel,
David Letterman.
David Letterman,
yeah.
Like he's really the first person to kind of do Letterman. Even as Jimmy Carter and as Reagan, while not as good as some people who would come after him, are very, serviceable. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he just missed for me. I feel like I've said that a lot, but he's certainly high up on the list. Certainly kept the show afloat for season 6 through 9. So not sad to see him be on your ballot.
Yeah, Shari, was Piscopo ever someone who resonated with you as an SNL fan?
Not as much. Again, back when I was younger, I saw the reruns. But now, I mean, he and Eddie were they were almost like brothers. It was so funny how they just sort of, I heard, Joe's another one who's a great interview. If you get a chance to hear him interviewed. I've heard a couple different interviews with him. He loves talking about his time on the show, which is cool because many don't love to talk about it. And he loves talking about it. And he has opinions, and he's not afraid to say them. And I respect him for that, though I don't always agree with them. His Sinatra, I mean, Frank gave the seal of approval. And, when the person you're doing says it's great. I heard Frank had some problems with Phil's impression. Thought it was a little mean-spirited, but he thought Joe did it with love. And Joe even says that he was such a Sinatra fan that it was like a total kick.
Yeah.
And
they even did a sketch that revolved around Joe making sure that he did right by Sinatra with his impression. They kind of revolved a sketch around that idea.
So yeah, for sure, definitely a huge part of that era of the show. And like I said, he and Eddie just had a chemistry that you don't see a lot. Yet you think they would have done a movie together or something, right?
Yeah.
But they
to
never
Bill's
did.
point, he just sort of fell off. I know Joe Piscopo's been doing radio, I think in the New York area for a long time. But he, as far as acting goes, he hadn't really done anything of note, really. But yeah, it would have been great to see he and Eddie actually do a movie together.
Yeah, well, it's not too late. They're both still in good shape.
Yeah, that's true.
They're both still in great shape, so why not?
Yeah, very, very true. So all of us have shared our the 15 people on our ballots. I think we had a consensus. It looks like with Buck Henry, Vanessa Bayer, Paula Pell, Jack Handy. I think we had a consensus with Dave Grohl, and Candice Bergen was the other one. That was 3 for 3 in this episode. But a lot of dissenting opinions, a lot of really valid opinions that we didn't go completely chalk with each other, which I found interesting. So yeah, we did it, everybody. Any as far as our discussion today, any kind of grand thoughts, Bill?
Well, I mean, it speaks to how grand the history of the show is that we are having this discussion, that there are dissenting opinions on people who, on any other list, you'd be like, well, of course they're getting in. The bench is so deep for cast and host and writers that there's so many great people, and we didn't even get to some of them who are on this list who are going to get some real consideration from the voters. So I'm happy to see everybody's list, how they came together, and maybe next year we'll have some people who get in that didn't make my list.
Yeah, Shari, what do you make of this exercise that we just did?
Oh my gosh, this was so much fun. I loved it. I love it. I love how we all had some interesting views. And again, how we prove time after time, every podcast I listen to, whether it's the Hot Take Show or another podcast I listen to, This Week in SNL, where they do the vintage stuff, it's so subjective. And one person's favorite sketch, another person is going to hate. One person's favorite cast member, etc., and so forth. And that's the beauty of SNL. It's got something for almost everybody, and it's all so subjective. I love that about it. I love that we can have a 2-hour conversation, and we could probably keep going.
Sure we
because
could.
There's just so much to talk about.
Yeah, we barely probably got to. There's still probably a dozen people that we didn't even nominees that we didn't even talk about that I'm sure we could. But yeah, that was so much fun. Thank you both so much for joining me. Before we wrap up here, we have a little announcement to make here on the SNL Hall of Fame. This is sort of I like to call like I'll say peaceful transfer of power that we're doing right now. Because starting in season 7, the great Bill Kenney will be taking over for me as the chief conversationalist, leading these conversations about all these great nominees. I'll be stepping aside. I have other stuff that I'm doing, but I use the bat phone. I turn on the bat signal, and Bill responded. And Bill Kenney will be leading the conversations next season here on the SNL Hall of Fame. Bill, like I said, a peaceful transfer of power. How you feeling about this gig, man?
Thomas, I feel like I'm following like LeBron or Magic Johnson. Like this, you've done such a stellar job over the last few seasons hosting. It's always a joy to listen to the podcast, even when I'm not on, which is wild. So I love hearing your conversations with all these different people. I'm excited for the opportunity, but big shoes to fill after Thomas Sena. So excited, and I'm excited that you'll be coming on with me.
Yes.
and talking as well, and we'll be in conversation off the podcast about it as well. So excited to get started.
Yes, so exciting. I will be returning for an episode as a guest of Bill's. I'll be sitting in the different chair, so that'll be interesting. Shari, you have a new teammate here at the SNL Hall of Fame.
Yes, I welcome Bill. I'm so excited. I can't believe 7 seasons. This will be our last season, but I am very eager to chug down my water at the water cooler and talk about some of the conversations you're going to be having. I know there's going to be a lot of great ones. And yeah, very excited. Welcome to the family.
Thank you very much. I hope I'm not like Ted McGinley on Happy Days, where I drive this into the ground. So bringing me in after Fonzie and Richie leave, and here I am. But no, it's going to be a lot of fun, and we've got a lot of great people lined up already. A lot of great nominees. So really excited to jump into it.
Yes, I've seen the list of nominees for season 7, which we will reveal in the first episode of season 7, the draft episode. Those will get revealed, but I've seen the list because I'm VIP still. I'm privy to that kind of thing. So this is going to be an exciting season. So welcome Bill Kenney to the SNL Hall of Fame. Bill, do you have anything else? What's been going on in general at the SNN, or anything else you want to plug?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me over at the Saturday Night Network on a variety of shows, the Hot Take Show, the roundtables. We're gearing up, heading towards the midpoint, crazy to think, of season 50 already. So we've got 3 more episodes of SNL before the Christmas break. And then, I mean, the SNL 50 special is going to be upon us before we know it. Got a lot of fun stuff planned over at the SNN with that as well. So make sure you go over and check us out on the Saturday Night Network.
Yeah, go check out the Saturday Night Network. Very good friends over there, John Schneider's, and the whole team have done an amazing job with the content that they've provided. I've been on a hot take show this season and by the numbers. Maybe I'll be on a roundtable. I don't know. That might be in my future. We'll see. But I always love guesting. Mike Murray told me I'm a 20 timer on the SNN. So that was more than I even thought.
Yeah, I mean, and you know what? When I was listening to you and Rebecca the other day talk about 80, I kind of laughed because you were talking about the trivia that we did all the way back in season 46, and that was how I met both of you. I was the team leader for that trivia with me, you, and Rebecca, and we got beat by somebody who had even more of a memory than I do about SNL. But we had such a great time, and it was the forging of a couple of good friendships over at the SNN with that.
Yeah, Marcus Jennings is somewhere hooked up to like a computer. He's like plugged in and like downloading SNL trivia in his mind as we speak. It's nuts. So
game, respect, game, man. Wow.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Shari, you have anything to plug? Water cooler? How's that been going?
Yeah, I'm the baby here. I'm just like 15 episodes in to my very first podcast. 5 years ago, before the pandemic, I didn't know what the heck a podcast was. I admit it, I'm a little bit behind, but I'm catching up. And now here I am. I keep telling everybody, all my friends, my coworkers and things, I'm like, I have 15 episodes of a podcast. Would you ever guess that? And they just kind of shake their heads in amazement. So yeah, we just recorded our 15th, Joe and JD and I, of the SNL Water Cooler. And it has just been a joy. So much fun. And I look forward to our recording every week. And not going to lie, kind of happy for a little break. But we'll be back in January to follow up Bill's excellent conversationalist skills and break down every episode of the Hall of Fame. And yeah, very excited. Check out our 80 Brian episode that should be dropping soon.
Yes. You can hear Shari, Joe, and JD there on the SNL Hall of Fame water cooler. And as far as logistics for voting, you can go register to vote at snlhof.com. If you're a past voter, JD will email a ballot to you. Voting is now open and will close on December 13th at midnight Eastern time. So please vote. Exercise your right to vote. For Shari Fesko and Bill Kenney, I'm Thomas Sena. Do us all a favor, and on your way out, as you pass the weekend update exhibit, turn out the lights, because the SNL Hall of Fame is now closed.
Thanks for listening to the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. Make sure to rate, review, share, and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media at SNL HOF. This is Doug Denant saying, see you next week.
To podcasts and such.